Good morning, church. It's good to see everyone. Who's happy to be back? Absolutely. It's so great to be back. We had a great service at 9:30 this morning. Had a few people, so we're glad you all can join us this morning. Would y'all please stand and join us for our first praise hymn this morning? This one is "Center My Life."
My eyes to see Jesus in all your glory. Turn my eyes, turn my heart to see and wonder of how you love me. Turn my heart, oh my God, forever you reign, you and now. Hear the sound of your name, Jesus. There is none more beautiful than Jesus. There is none more powerful, risen Christ, lifted high. Jesus, now be glorified. Center my life on your name. Center my life on your name. My eyes made to serve you, the mercy glory. Turn my eyes, teach my heart all it wisdom to live forever. Teach my heart, oh my God, forever you reign, here and now. Hear the sound of your name, Jesus. There is none more beautiful than Jesus. There is none more powerful, risen Christ, lifted high. Jesus, now be glorified. Center my life on your name. Center my life on your name. Whoa, whoa, oh my God, forever you reign, here and now. Hear the sound of your name, Jesus. There is none more beautiful than Jesus. There is none more powerful, risen Christ, lifted high. Jesus, now be glorified. Risen Christ, lifted high. Jesus, now be glorified. Jesus, there is none more beautiful than Jesus. There is none more powerful, risen Christ, lifted high. Jesus, now be glorified. Center my life on your name. Center my life on your name. Whoa,
Man, y'all can be seated. Well, good morning, everybody. It's glad you're here. I was wondering if anybody would show up or if they'd rather stay home in their pajamas. So, yeah, Peggy was popular at taking church in pajamas over the past several weeks. So, but we're glad you're here. We're trying to be as safe as always, and so thank you for following our rules and just kind of being careful. So thank you for that. Today's Mother's Day, So that's special and important and great, and I'm really glad we got to come back on Mother's Day and get to enjoy our church family. There's some spots over here, guys, if you want to go over here. Nobody likes the front rows. That's why I left it bare, see if anybody would actually sit there. But yeah, so we're thankful for our mothers. One mom just walked in, so thank you for coming. So on the way of announcements, Carter, Katie. See, it's been a while. Yeah, the kids, pay attention. No. Okay. Anyways, it's super awesome to be back together. Way of announcements, just pray for our leaders as we try to figure out summer activities. We got, VBS is going to be ahead of us before we know it. Camps are already being discussed and wondered whether or not that's intelligent to do that. So there's a lot so pray for our leaders, will you? That would be great if we could get some prayer out there so we know to make the right decisions. I'm thankful for, I'll go ahead and say I'm thankful for our video and audio people and our sound people and music people to just stay here all morning. And so thank you for them. Without further ado, let me pray for you and we'll get going. God, we thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. We love you and we appreciate you. And Lord, we thank you for the availability of being in our building today, to be the church of God inside of the building, inside of fellowship with one another. Lord, thank you for that. Even though it's at a distance, we're grateful, Father, that you provided that. But Lord, we're also thankful that in the past weeks, we've been able to be the church outside of this building. And we're also thankful, Father, that you've called us to do that. You've called us to be priests and priestesses throughout the nations, Lord, to bring people into the kingdom of God through our actions and through our voices. And Lord, I'm thankful that our church family was active in doing that. Thank you for the opportunity to virtually be out there as well. Lord, as we're meeting in person and we're also meeting virtually, we just are so grateful for our church family. And we ask that you cover us all, Lord, with your protection and your grace and your comfort. In Jesus' name, amen.
Would y'all please stand and join us for our next praise hymn. This one is Yes, I Will.
Same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now. No way. The same God who's never late is working all things out. Working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will lift your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will. God, know one thing. The same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now. No way. The same God who's never late is working all things out. Working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will lift your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days.
going to sing hymn number 426, Victory in Jesus. We'll sing all the verses. The words will be on the screen. This awesome day of worship, Lord. We thank you for just allowing us together in your house once more. And Lord, we just thank you for just being with us during this time of quarantine. Ask that you please be with those who are still unable to join us, and ask that you please watch over them and just bless them at home, Lord. Lord, I ask that you please just be with those who are sick, those who are hurting. We just lift them up to you. Ask that you just cover them with your healing hands. We ask for your forgiveness, Lord, and it's in your blessed name we pray. Amen.
Well, I'm going to try to continue on to do the teaching of learning more about God, learning more about how we can be living in the image of God as we press on through this. I've tried to do my best doing that through video, but you know, it's just not the same until I'm looking in your eyes. You know, it's so good to be to be able to see you, to have face-to-face content, for lack of a better term. And so thank you guys for coming, for being here. Today I'm going to start with reading from Proverbs chapter 1. The cool thing about Proverbs, and I've said this before, is if you're interested in some sort of a guided devotion, you could do Proverbs for 31 days. And for the months that have 30 days, you just go ahead and read that extra chapter. But because there's 31 Proverbs, and most months have 30 or 31 days. So chapter 1 begins by telling us what the purpose of Proverbs is all about. It tells us about how we can gain wisdom, how we can have knowledge. It goes on in kind of a really good teaching way of how and why Proverbs is there. And the cool thing about Proverbs is, as we read it, we see how Solomon, the writer of Proverbs, was definitely interested in us understanding the family unit and what that was all about. And he talks about fathers and he talks about mothers. And so today, since it's Mother's Day, we're going to kind of focus on the moms. And but I'll be starting, I think I'm going to read verses 5 through 9. And so if you want to follow along, go ahead and turn there. Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to be covering 5 through 9. I got this idea, by the way, because Chancey was reading her devotion, and Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5 was the devotion for that particular day. She shared that with me, and I thought, I like this, because I remember that whole teaching. So let's go. Let the wise listen to the Proverbs and become even wiser. So that's us, right? We want to do that. Let those with understanding receive guidance by exploring the meaning in these proverbs and parables and the words of the wise in their riddles. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. My child, this is verse 8, my child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. So the book of Proverbs starts out this way. It begins with Solomon, the king of Israel, who was David's son. He was a great king. Matter of fact, he was the son of a great king. This means that he was pretty famous. He was pretty powerful. He was supreme in the whole realm where he was. People bowed in his presence. They did what he said, and he had an immense amount of authority and honor. But how did Solomon treat his mother, I wonder, as he was in this exalted role? So, if you might remember, his mother was Bathsheba. She was married to his father David under some pretty sketchy circumstances, we like to say. But she was his mother. So how did he treat her? Well, we get a little bit of a clue to this in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 19. It says this: Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah. The king arose to meet her. He bowed before her and sat on his throne, and then he had a throne set for the king's mother, and she sat on his right. This is pretty cool. This is pretty neat. They had this conversation, right? And what did he do? He rose when she came into the room. He bowed before her when she approached him, and then he called for a throne to be brought in to set beside him, so that she sat at the same place of honor that he did. She was his mother. Even kings should rise when their mothers enter the room. It's a pretty cool example that he set for us. Solomon was not the perfect king. He was not a perfect man. But none of the writers are perfect people of the Bible. None of us are perfect people. But God guided his insights, and he preserved for us some really, really good lessons in what Solomon wrote in the book of Proverbs. And today I want all of us to kind of focus in on 4 different things that we're taught through these verses. There are 4 lessons, and basically the ultimate issue is our relationship with God. These lessons, they all relate to God. Not only do they give us wisdom, but this is different from the wisdom that you might read if you were to go grab a self-help book from the library, or you're reading the parent magazine that you get, here at church if you go to that Sunday school class, or anything else you might pick up and read. This wisdom is way different than that, because this wisdom overlaps The wisdom of God with the wisdom of the world. And so Solomon means for us to hear this counsel in how it relates in our relationship with our family and how our relationship relates to God. We often think of the book of Proverbs as a book of what you can learn about ordinary living on earth as a Christian. And it pretty much is. The point of this book is how it takes everything we do and relates it to God so that God can be the center of it all. Whether you're driving to work, whether you're doing a hobby, whatever it is that you're doing, the idea of Proverbs is to point us with wisdom to the fact that we're supposed to be living with God in the center of it all. So, what's the first lesson that he teaches us? He teaches us about the origin of family. Family wasn't just something that was just haphazardly thrown together. It wasn't this accidental evolutionary development. It wasn't any of that. It was God ordained. Solomon takes us on a journey to realize that the father and the mother and the children are all related in this unique, accountable relationship. He says in verse 8, I'll reread that. He says, "My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction." See, this was a given for Solomon. Solomon wrote this as if this is what everybody does. But as you might know, in our day and age, this isn't really what everybody does. Not all of our children are listening to their father's correction. Not all of us are sitting at our mom's knee learning like we should. We take it for granted more than we should. Families are God's idea. Families are God's plan. They're God's way. And like I said, they're not some arbitrary evolutionary development based on instincts. Family is ordained by God through creation. In the very first chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says, "And God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, 'Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth.'" Well, how are they to do this? Earth filling, fruitful stuff and things. By indiscriminate mating and pregnancies? No. The second chapter tells us how. "A man shall leave his mother and his father, and shall cleave to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." You see, there's this profound covenant relationship between a man and a woman that God created where they're cleaving to each other, and they become this one flesh union. It's God's idea as the heart of the family. When this is broken by a tragic death or a tragic divorce, there may have to be single parent families out there. And God has been faithful to millions of fathers and mothers who have had to raise their children alone. But God's original purpose for the heart of the family was one man and one woman cleaving to each other as husband and wife and becoming one flesh in this amazing, fruitful sexual union. And couples that do that, here's the cool thing. Couples that do that, they show how a covenant relationship with God is supposed to look. When they love each other, when they love their kids, the people around them see how the relationship with God is supposed to work. So God shows us that the family was his plan, was his idea. The family is for his glory. And Solomon points that out in Proverbs chapter 1. So that's our first lesson of Proverbs 1. The second is the family as a school. Now this might sound depressing for some kids, but it's supposed to be the best school ever. You don't have to be sad. It's okay, kids. The family is God's basic school for instruction on how children are supposed to live in the world. Listen to verse 8. Again, this time from the New American Standard Version. "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching." The father here is the instructor, and the mother is the teacher. So therefore, the family is school. Everything you do in life has now become an opportunity to learn. God ordained the family not just to be fruitful and fill the earth with people, but to fill the earth with people who are instructed, who are taught. The family is a place where the next generation is not just born, the next generation learns how to live through the family. Life doesn't come naturally for human beings. There's only a few things that come natural. The sucking reflex for a baby comes natural. The falling reflex comes natural. I fall all the time, so there's proof of that. Yeah. The iris of the eye closes and opens naturally because of light. Pretty amazing. We don't have to learn to cry when we're hungry as babies or adults. But that's about it. After that, all the skills that are necessary for living in the world are learned from your mother and father. Humans have to learn just about everything from the basic skills of walking, talking, eating, the moral actions of courtesy, gratitude, respect, and most importantly, faith in Christ. The family of God is a school, and it's a huge undertaking for mothers and fathers. And if you're a single parent, it's an even larger undertaking. Teaching the next generation how to live in this world and be ready for the next is super important. And I hope moms and dads are taking it serious. So that's the number 2 lesson that we're taught in the first chapter of Proverbs. The first is the family is God's original plan. And then now we understand that the family is God's basic school for instruction. That's how kids are supposed to learn how to be, productive kids, productive adults, productive human beings. And so, as we learn that, we get to move into this cool thing on like, okay, what brings all that together? What's the glue that sticks all this together? And that's the third thing. The fear of the Lord is the unifying factor. It's the unifying theme in all of this. He begins this whole section of starting to talk about mothers and fathers in verse 7. He says, the fear of the Lord is the foundation of true wisdom. It's the beginning. It's where it starts. The foundation of family instruction begins with fearing God. Having a reverent fear before God. Understanding that I'm going to trust God and His concepts and His philosophies and His teachings. And I'm going to teach that to my children. I'm going to trust that more than I trust this worldly wisdom that's out there. And then you got to figure out how to overlap those things. That's what Proverbs helps us do. So in other words, if we ask what's the basis, the beginning, the integrated theme of the father's instruction and the mother's teaching, it has to be through the daily modeling and the daily counseling, the daily explaining and correcting and disciplining of how you interact with God. You have to model that to your children. And how do you do that? By fearing the Lord, we're told. The family isn't just a place for children to learn how to hold spoons, and walk on 2 feet, say please, to tie their shoes, to read, to look both ways, to cut grass, to put on makeup, to drive a car. No, the family is where all of this and more begins with learning about God. Guided by His Word through modeling of mom and dad. Specifically mom today because it's Mother's Day. The fear of God, the reverencing of God, the standing in awe of God, the trusting in God is what families are for. So, the family is God's idea. The family is a school. And the unifying theme of curriculum in that school is God. Fourth and finally, He reminds us that the responsibility is for both the mother and the father. Under God, both mothers and fathers share in the responsibility of this family instruction. I'm going to read verse 8 again, this time from the Message translation. Pay close attention, friend, to what your father tells you. Never forget what you learn at your mother's knee. You see, it doesn't say fathers instruct and moms change diapers. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say fathers work at the office and therefore hand the responsibility of teaching their children to their mother. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say mothers work at the office so that they can help provide and then gives the opportunity to instruct over to a caregiver. It doesn't say that either. It says fathers instruct and mothers teach. They share the responsibility. Do caregivers help? But yeah, but the primary discussion, primary responsibility falls on mom and dad. If it were Father's Day, I would probably trumpet some sort of a challenge to you fathers to take a fresh initiative at home, to see what that looks like for you. But today is Mother's Day. And so I want to encourage all moms that this responsibility to teach your children is immeasurably significant. Please take it seriously. God has this way of nullifying the greatness of the great and then exalting the lowliness of the lowly. And in our culture, motherhood, I think, is on the upswing. People are starting to realize the importance of moms. The importance of moms staying at home, more importantly, and learning and teaching and instructing their children on the way things go, along with their fathers. But finally, after decades of it being considered low, it is on the upswing. It used to get a lot of bad press if you were a stay-at-home mom. You just sit at home, that's all you do. Listen to this letter that I found. It was written to Ann Landers about 10 years ago. I'm so tired of all those ignorant people who come up to my husband and ask him if his wife has a full-time job or if she's just a housewife. Here's my job description. I'm a wife, mother, friend, confidant, personal advisor, lover, referee, peacemaker, housekeeper, laundress, chauffeur, interior decorator, gardener, painter, wallpaperer, dog groomer, veterinarian, manicurist, barber, seamstress, appointment manager, financial planner, bookkeeper, money manager, personal secretary, teacher, disciplinarian, entertainer, psychoanalyst, nurse, diagnostician, public relations expert, dietitian, nutritionist, baker, chef, fashion designer, letter writer for both sides of the family, not done. Also a travel agent, speech therapist, plumber, automobile maintenance and repair expert. I could go on. But from what studies I've seen, it would cost more than $75,000 to replace me. I took time out of my busy day to write this letter, Anne, because there are still ignorant people who believe a housewife is nothing more than a babysitter who sits on her behind all day and looks at soap operas. Well said. A lot could be said about what our moms do and how hard they work, and I hope that we understand the work that's involved in being a mom, and we appreciate that. I love the way that Solomon rounds out this little section. I'm going to read that to you and help us understand how important and significant it is for us to take hold and embrace what our mothers teach. He says in verse 9, what you learn from them, he's talking about his mom and his dad, what you learn from them will crown you with grace, and it will be a chain of honor around your neck, a mother's crown of joy. How amazing is that? Perhaps the way that we should end today is by reminding ourselves that as sons and daughters, whether young or old, that the fountain of life, the strong confidence, the deep satisfaction that comes from honoring all that is true about your mother teaches us to look back at who she was at the very beginning and what she's done for you up to this point. And to realize that you've received this crown of honor and grace because of that. And she has received a crown of joy. All through the Proverbs, you see situations and instances of Solomon writing about how we should not forget our moms, how important they are. He says, do not despise your mother when she is old. Then a little bit later in chapter 23, he says, let your father and your mother be glad. Let her rejoice who gave birth to you. Church family, friends, do not forsake the teaching of your mother. It will definitely be a wreath of grace around your head and a crown of joy upon hers. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for our moms We thank you for all that they are and all that they've done. And Father, help us to continue to sit at their knee and learn. Help us to continue to honor who they are, to treat our mothers with respect that they deserve, Father. Lord, as we walk, as we talk, and as we live life, help us to be reminded of those moments, even back in the day, back when we were young, when Mom taught us certain specific things on how to live. Father, we thank you that you designed the family, that it was your idea, that you set mothers and fathers apart to raise children, to be our teachers and to be our guidance counselors, to be our instructors, Father. We thank you for that. Lord, help us today take a moment to honor our mothers. And we love you and we thank you for creating them and using them to help us live. In Jesus' name, amen. You all please stand.
I'll join together as we sing hymn number 187 in the garden. Number 187.
God bless you, church family. I'm going to pass it off to Jim Hilton to pray for us before we go home.